And now, it's time for the Runnin' Rams Basketball Hour with Coach Jim Barron, presented by Rhode Joe's Saloon, legendary food and drink, and 920 WHJJ.
Good evening and welcome once again to Rhode Joe's Saloon, legendary food and drink, great deals every night. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rhode Joe's Saloon. Steve McDonald, Chris Desano with me from collegechalktalk.com and Cox Sports Television as well. Well, Molly Clark was just running around. Pat Clark, assistant coach for the University of Rhode Island, taking the family out for probably a free dinner, I guess, if it's Pat, you know. But no, I'm sure Pat's flipping the bill here for the family. It's good to see them out, and good to have a lot of Rhode fans out here tonight as well as we get ready for a couple of big contests over the week. A home game midweek against Fordham, and then a trip down to Philadelphia to take on Temple on Saturday afternoon. It is the Runnin' Rams Basketball Hour. Jim Barron will be with us in just a little bit, and later on, Delroy James scheduled to join us, and we're also going to talk to a representative from the Ryan Center about some of the things going on there, and it'll be a good chance to catch up with Jim Cordero, who is operating manager down there, and you'll find out what's going on. A very special event coming up on Wednesday that we want to hear more about. So plenty on the plate for this evening at Rhode Joe's Saloon. It's all brought to you by the Beltone Hearing Aid Centers and the Beltone Hearing Aid Centers Rams Radio Network. And Chalk Talk, presented by Cox Sports. Cox Sports brings you exclusive TV coverage of Runnin' Rams basketball. Cox Sports is local sports. Chris Desano, I know you got a chance to get updated on the coaches' conferences earlier today on the throughout the Atlantic 10 every Monday morning after a week of activity. Coaches spend some time with the media via the telephone. And what'd you learn this morning? Any breaking news coming out of this morning's conversations?
Nothing earth-shattering this morning, Steve, but for Rhode Island's wow.
Go ahead. Just move that mic up a little bit. There you go.
How are we doing now?
You're doing great.
Could be worse.
That's fine.
From Rhode Island's perspective, I think that the one thing that came out of the teleconference this morning is Fran Dunphy was speaking a little bit about Juan Fernandez, his point guard. Fernandez has been sidelined for the last two games, didn't play at all last week in victories over Charlotte and St. Joe's, tweaked his knee a few weeks ago. And Dunphy said that they are aiming for a return for Fernandez on Wednesday night, and obviously Rhode Island goes in there Saturday. So it'll be interesting. They're still taking it day by day. They don't know at this point in time, but they're shooting for a return this week. And
with Rhode Island on the schedule, we'll see what happens over the weekend. In this past week in the Atlantic 10, Tu Holloway just making a real push for Player of the Year. Fifth time this year that he's been the A10 Player of the Week, and he gets that honor again and does so in fine fashion. A couple of wins for Xavier, GW, and Richmond. The Richmond one was a big one that kind of separated those two teams. Xavier was undefeated at the time. Richmond had the one loss to Rhode Island, but it gives Richmond another loss. It kind of bumps them down a peg, tied with UMass now. But 33 points in that Richmond game for Tu Holloway and a perfect 17 of 17 from the free throw line.
Yeah, that's Holloway, and that's his calling card, getting to the line and converting once he gets there. And really, that's been Xavier's calling card over the last few seasons. Like you said, Steve, he's beginning to separate himself. And not only did that game against Richmond, which was a blowout 23-point win in favor of Xavier over the Spiders, separate Xavier from Richmond, but it also began to separate Holloway from Justin Harper and Kevin Anderson, two other leading Player of the Year candidates. Kevin Anderson did not have his best game. Harper was still strong, but obviously when you go in on the road, play at a place like the Robins Center and come away with a convincing win and play the way Holloway did, he's positioning himself very well for that potential honor here down the stretch.
Yeah, you got to think it's Holloway probably, and then Harper would be the other competition. Does Gurley get involved in that? A big-time scorer for UMass, but not really a complete player as those guys might be.
Completely agree. I think Gurley does an excellent job with his frame, the frame that he has, 6'4", 200 pounds, very solidly built, getting in there. He has done a little bit better job this year creating for his teammates, but still really only averages about 4 boards per game and then a couple of assists. So he's more of a pure scorer. I think the fourth guy that you want to consider on that list, along with Holloway, Harper, and Kevin Anderson, would be Billy Clark from Duquesne, who's having an outstanding season so far. So he'd be my fourth, at least at this point in time.
And the Clark members continue to run around Rhode Joe's, and we have to have all the URI fans here for the Runnin' Rams Basketball Hour. Chris Desano with us right now. And, Chris, when you look at Rookie of the Week in the A10, another person who's running away with things, 4 straight, 5 on the year. T.J. McConnell from Duquesne just having himself a terrific breakout year.
Yeah, T.J. McConnell has been absolutely outstanding for Ron Everhart. Everhart actually today on the coaches' teleconference talked a little bit about how McConnell came to be at Duquesne. Everhart has known an uncle of McConnell's for a long time, started recruiting, or at least not recruiting, but looking at him early on. And
don't want anybody any trouble here.
Exactly. And as the story has it, Everhart was laid up in the hospital when McConnell was in the summer after finishing his 9th grade year. McConnell and the uncle came into the hospital, and it was right at that point in time that McConnell ended up committing to Duquesne, verbaling to them, and Everhart said he never wavered throughout the process, always maintained that it was where he wanted to be, and he's been a fantastic player for the Dukes.
Hey, let's look at the standings in the Atlantic 10. We've got Chris DeSanto with us from CollegeChalkTalk.com, and you can access CollegeChalkTalk.com from the A10 website, also with Cox Sports Television as well. Standings with Duquesne and Xavier still at the top at 7-0 now. Temple, Richmond, and UMass at 5-2. UMass with that win over Rhode Island, pumping themselves up into a tie for 3rd place. And if you have to pick a surprise team in this league right now, it would be not only Duquesne, but also the University of Massachusetts. Picked, 11th, I think, in the preseason. And here they are tied for 3rd. So UMass has been one of those teams to turn some heads early on.
Yeah, they have. Derek Kellogg's done a good job up there this year, and slowly trying to integrate some different pieces. Still needs some additional parts to get his dribble drive motion offense that he wants to run, working the way that I think he'd like to have it work optimally. But they're doing a nice job, and as you said, Gurley's been an outstanding player. Freddie Riley's a streaky scorer, but he's been able to do certain things at times for them and give them a little bit more of an outside presence. And yesterday, Javorn Farrell came up big, hit a few solid buckets down the stretch to help UMass pull away.
URI at 4-3, GW at 4-3 as well. And as you jockey for position to get ready for A10 tournament play, you hope to you try your best to try to get a bye, but if you can't, you try to get that home game in that first round. And Rhode Island situated in pretty good shape for that. Then Dayton, SBU, St. Bonaventure, that is, and LaSalle, all at 3 and 4. St. Louis, Charlotte, Fordham, and St. Joe's winding out the list for the Atlantic 10. You look at some of the categories. Points scored, 82 points per game for Duquesne. And that's not something that's much of a surprise. They've always been a big-time scoring team with Coach Everhart, but they're 7th in points allowed at this point at 67, and they're number 1 in scoring margin, the difference between those two. They're starting to play some defense this year and starting to limit the opposition as far as how many times they're successful handling the basketball.
Yeah, I think they're starting to play better defense for a couple of reasons. Number one, the 2 young guards that they have, McConnell, who we've obviously talked about, and Mike Talley, who's a good individual defender as well. They have certainly helped in terms of allowing Ron Everhart to employ some more high ball pressure. In addition, one of the things that leads to good defense is good offense, and this is a team that's sharing the basketball exceptionally well, one of the tops in the country. And, to borrow sort of a line from Fran Dunphy, who obviously is a great coach at Temple, Temple is such an excellent defensive team because they're always shooting the ball from spots on the floor that allows them to retreat with balance. And I think that Duquesne this year, by virtue of getting these 2 young guards in and getting the ball in better scoring opportunities for people like Billy Clark and Damian Saunders, it's led to more flat floor balance, and it has helped them become a better defensive team as well. Absolutely.
Rhode Island with Fordham and Temple on the list this week, Wednesday night at the Ryan Center. It's time to take on Fordham. They are 0-5 in league play right now, but Chris Gaston is their best player, and he's 10th in points in the league and number 1 in rebounding, the only guy averaging double figures in rebounding.
Yeah, he is an outstanding talent, Chris Gaston, and I think he's thriving under Tom Pecora this year. As you said, he's the only double-double guy. People thought that maybe Andrew Nicholson from Bonaventure would be up there with him. Nicholson's close, but not quite there. Gaston is an excellent scorer. He's a forward that can really do a bit of everything. The one thing that he doesn't do particularly well still at this point in his career, he's just a sophomore, is pass the ball. He's a little turnover prone, averages about 4 turnovers a game. So if you throw some looks at him from different angles, you can frustrate him at times, but there's no question he's a great talent. I think where Fordham's improved the most this year, to expound a little bit on their team, is defensively. Pecora is an excellent defensive coach. He was at Hofstra for many years, had success there, and it's a team that right now is in the top half of the league, tied with St. Bonaventure for 7th in the league at defensive field goal percentage. And this is a team that used to just get shredded on the defensive end in previous years. So the first thing that you change when you come in and try to change the culture is the effort and intensity, and that usually shows up first on the defensive side of the ball, and that's no exception with Fordham.
Now, Fordham making the move. This one's at the Ryan Center, but later on in the year, Rhode Island will go to Fordham. They'll be playing them at the Meadowlands rather than at Rose Hill Gymnasium, giving away a real home court advantage in that high school type of gym at Rose Hill on the campus of Fordham. Moving down the street, it's going to be probably largely an empty Meadowlands, but a chance for them to play in a big-time arena. So you like the way that they're pushing the program, but they give up a little bit on the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they are trying to market the program, play some certain teams at larger venues and try to capitalize upon that. But, yeah, it'll likely be empty. Although I'm not sure if they played St. John's there earlier in the year, but they stung St. John's. And by the transitive property, I guess, which we should never use, that means that Fordham could beat Duke as well.
Absolutely, right? That was a shocker, and not only by the fact that St. John's beat Duke, but also by the margin in which they did it. Hey, if you go on the Atlantic 10 website and you get over to chalktalk.com, which Chris Tisano runs, you see your fan poll, and the question is, how many A-10 teams get in the NCAA tournament this year? You look at the list, everybody's got at least 5 losses in the overall standings for the league. Is it one team? They get the automatic. Is it 2, 3, or 4? Where do you see the Atlantic 10 playing out this year?
Put me on the spot, Steve. I think right now, in addition to obviously just overall record from a strength and schedule and an RPI perspective, there are only 2 teams in the Atlantic 10 that are extremely well positioned from an RPI perspective. And well positioned means you've got an RPI under 40 or right around 40 or less. Those 2 teams are Xavier, which sits at 24, and Temple, which at last glance was at 39. Richmond isn't too far behind at 51, and even though that loss to Xavier was certainly a humbling loss, it was still just one game. It's only one loss. And if they can avoid bad losses, they may be able to put themselves in the discussion. They've got a signature win over Purdue. But right now, I'd say 2 Atlantic 10 teams, likely Xavier and Temple, and you're rooting for both of those teams to get knocked off in the conference tournament and upset by someone else. Yeah,
the RPIs are not great for most of the league. Duquesne, who's tied for first in the league at 77, UMass at 79, Rhode Island at 82, and then everybody else is 100-plus in the RPI with Fordham and St. Joe's over 200. So that not only hurts the league as far as the overall RPI, but also those top teams have to play those bottom teams, and when they do, their RPI is going to fall even if they win that game. Whether it be on the road or at home, they'll still fall back even if they put in a good performance.
Yeah, it's a very interesting year in the Atlantic 10 because you have a team like Fordham, which over the past 4 or 5 years has had an RPI way down in the 300s. Now, they've come way up to about 215 or so, but everybody else is much more bunched towards the middle.
Sure.
There's not a clear division, as you said, like we've had in past years, where maybe 5 or 6 teams are in the top 60, 75 of the RPI, and then you've got some others that are straggling behind. When you go and play these teams, you certainly have to beat them, and your RPI is still going to dip a little bit. But they've all gotten a little better, so even though their RPIs aren't great, you lose to them, and then you really take a hit.
Talking to Chris Tisano of CollegeChalkTalk.com and Cox Sports Television as well, part of the Runnin Rams Basketball Hour. And we are here at Rhode Joe's Saloon. We're going to talk to Jim Barron in just a moment about the UMass game, then look ahead to Fordham and Temple. We have looked ahead already, but how about a look back? Your thoughts on the loss yesterday for Rhode Island at UMass?
Tough loss yesterday. I mean, arch rival. They've been a nemesis over the past few seasons. Always seem to get at least one of 2. And yesterday, I think it was simply a situation where Rhode Island was beaten on the boards. UMass really controlled the glass, and they're the 4th best offensive rebounding team in the Atlantic 10 this year. So a focal point of that game heading in had to be to try to limit their opportunity at second chance points. And that wasn't done as effectively as I'm sure the coaching staff would have liked. And then 7 for 30 from 3-point range and 20 3-point attempts in the second half. Just not the type of balance I think offensively that you'd want ideally.
Yeah, Rhode Island shooting woes continue, and that's something going into the season I don't think a lot of people expected to see. They had some guys coming back that had pretty good numbers, and then when Nick Milosevic takes off and does as well as he has done from 3-point range, and then you think coming back, you think, well, Ben Eves might get into that stroke at the beginning of the year and be able to, in a full year this year, contribute in that way. Akeem Richmond, you kind of think he'll pick up where he left off, but all the pieces haven't fallen together. Certainly, Lesevich has had himself a great year from there, but even he's struggling a little bit at this time of the season.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There's been inconsistency. I mean, Richmond showed in a couple of games right around the turn of the calendar year, started shooting the ball better. You thought he was going to take off from there, and you know, that hasn't necessarily happened, and others have just been hot and cold as well. And a lot of times these guys have had solid looks. There were some decent looks yesterday at certain points. There were also some shots that were forced and taken a little bit early in the shot clock, but it's just one of those things.
When you look at Rhode Island's schedule, they do end up with Temple at the end of the week on Saturday afternoon. Also on that day, UMass is at St. Joe's and Dayton at LaSalle. And Dayton-LaSalle, you would think would be a pretty good matchup. That one is going to be in Philadelphia. Dayton, a team that certainly plays much better at home than they do on the road. They're the number one rebounding team in the Atlantic 10 when you look at rebounding margin. And LaSalle, a pretty talented team that struggles to put it all together. That Dayton-LaSalle game might be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, it should be. LaSalle has now won, beginning with the win over Rhode Island here a week or 10 days back or so. They've now won their next two games against Charlotte and St. Joe's, and they're a team that offensively can be very explosive. Dayton on the other side of the ball prides himself on high-pressure defense, so something's got to give in that one.
Without question. And on Wednesday, when Rhode Island's taking on Fordham, we also have Bonaventure at Dayton and Temple and LaSalle getting together. Bonaventure, one of the teams that is very competitive this year, and they'll be up against the Dayton Flyers on that evening. Everybody plays on Wednesday, everybody plays on Saturday. No games scattered throughout the week this week, so it's a full slate on Wednesday night and a full slate throughout the day on Saturday in the Atlantic 10. Chris Tassano, thanks so much for spending some time with us. We appreciate it very much. And on top of the Atlantic 10, indeed, with collegechalktalk.com, you can hop on directly on collegechalktalk.com, or you can go through the Atlantic 10 website and get there. And also you'll see and hear Chris on Cox Sports Television. You guys got the game on Wednesday, right, against Fordham?
We are. The streaming coverage for Cox Sports. We'll be doing that one. Absolutely.
So we look forward to seeing you there, and continued success with the website. And thanks for being part of the show. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
Chris Tassano with us on here at Rhode Joe's, part of the Runnin Rams Basketball Hour. We got Jim Barron coming up in just a few moments. And again, we'd like to thank our friends from Cox Sports, bringing you exclusive TV coverage of Runnin Rams basketball. Cox Sports is indeed local sports. Back to Rhode Joe's right after this.